contributing around 17% to the total GDP and provide 58% employment to the population.
India's immediate neighbors Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Nepal have either plunged into an economic crisis.
The initial year of India witnessed a strong center with a focus on consolidating the nation.
2047 में मेरे विजन का भारत एक आदर्श देश होगा.
Another notable feature of Indian foreign policy has been its strong advocacy of general and complete disarmament.
In 1943, it was a dark era for India because 40 million people died because of starvation.
Good morning everyone. I am Simran Rathore is here to talk about contribution of agriculture to the national economy. The role of agriculture in contributing to Indian gross domestic product GDP has been long a focal point of economic studies and policy decisions. As a crucial sector in Indian economy, agriculture's significance cannot be overstated, making its contribution to GDP a vital indicator of a sector health and its impact on the country's overall economic performance. Significance of agriculture is it holds a significant place in an economy, with overall 70% of rulers household relying on it for their livelihood, contributing around 17% to the total GDP and provide 58% employment to the population. Over the decades, Indian agriculture has witnessed remarkable growth with food grain production from 51 million tons in 1950-51 to 250 million tons in 2011 to 12, the highest level after independence. Some key facts about Indian agriculture are: India is the world's largest exporter of cotton, leading in a production of various vegetables such as ginger, okra, potatoes, etc. Sikkim achieved the milestone of becoming the world's first state to achieve 100% organic farming, globally ranking second in agriculture production. Indian agriculture production has experienced substantial growth with an annual growth rate of 12% over the past 15 years, reaching $459 million. Ranked ninth globally for agriculture export, India's agriculture sector continues to play a pivotal role in a global market. However, the GDP is crucial for policymakers, economists and stakeholders, as the sector continues to evolve with technological advancement and changing dynamic, analyzing its impact on the economy for shaping future policy and strategies. Thank you.
Good morning, one and all present here. My name is Vijay and my topic is China's debt trap policy. Debt trap policy is a type of diplomacy based on debt carried out in a bilateral relations between countries. For example, China took Sri Lanka's Hambantota port on a 99-year lease on account to Sri Lanka's failure to pay Chinese debt. Cause of concern for smaller countries: India's immediate neighbors Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Nepal have either plunged into an economic crisis or rare showing signs of economic distress. Apart from economic distress, one thing running common between these countries is that they are all part of China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI). The Chinese government through BRI invests in building ports, roads, bridges, dams, power stations, railroads, etc. China is known to have BRI deals with all three countries. Cause of concern for India: smaller nation falling into the lap of China, India, Nepal is concerned with the smaller nations like Nepal, Pakistan, etc. coming under the influence of China. Growing Chinese influence: it has increased the China's influence in the region that to a considerable level, which is against India's desire to emerge as a net security provider in the region. Against sovereignty of India: the Chinese funded projects like China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which passes through the territory of India, are direct challenge to the sovereignty of India. Responses to China's debt trap policy: B3W initiative. The G7 countries proposed a Build Back Better World initiative at the 47 G7 summit to counter China's BRI. Blue Dot Network (BDN). It is a multi-stakeholder initiative formed by the US, Japan and Australia to bring together governments, the private sector and civil society to promote high quality trusted standards for global infrastructure development. Global Gateway. In a bid to compete with BRI, the European Union recently launched the Global Gateway, a new infrastructure development scheme. With the growing influence of China, India is looking to strengthen its walls with its human-centric development approach. India has offered a credit line of $2.5 billion to Sri Lanka. India will have to work with its partners in the region to offer alternative connectivity arrangements to its neighbors. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. My name is Sonaksh Negi and today topic is center-state relation. Center-state relation in India is a complex interplay of power and authority between central government and state government. The Indian constitution, which is based on principle of federalism, divides the legislative, executive and financial power between center and states. However, the constitution also provides for a strong center that can intervene in the affair of states. Let's take a look at evolution of center-state relation. The initial year of India witnessed a strong center with a focus on consolidating the nation. The Planning Commission played a crucial role in shaping development policies, fostering a centralizing tendencies. The 42nd Amendment Act transferred 5 subjects from state list to concurrent list and gave more power to center to deal with national emergencies. This, however, was reversed by 44th Amendment Act and it restored balance of power between center and state. The emphasis shifted towards cooperative federalism, marked by the recommendation of Sarkaria Commission and establishment of Interstate Council. Further, the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act marked a significant step towards decentralization of power, empowering local bodies and enhancing state autonomy from local levels like panchayat and municipalities. The Finance Commission also became a critical tool for fiscal federalism. The 101st Amendment introduced the GST, which replaced the multiple indirect tax levied by the state and center and created a uniform tax system. It enhanced cooperative federalism. Moving on from evolution, let's look at the challenges of center-state relation. First of all, there is ineffective functioning of several bodies. The Interstate Council itself has met only once in last 7 years, while the National Development Council has not met at all. Secondly, the misconceived GST has taken away much of the financial autonomy of states and has made the country's indirect tax regime unitary in nature. During pandemic, the union government repeatedly violated the compensation guarantees to the states under GST regime. Concluding from this, India's center-state relations are adaptable and dynamic, responding to changes in politics, society and the economy. Continuous dialogue, trust building and innovation are key to navigating challenges and seizing opportunities in federal system. Thank you.
गुड मॉर्निंग, माय नेम इज रुचि शर्मा। 2047 में भारत के लिए मेरा दृष्टिकोण 25 वर्षों के बाद भारत 2047 में अपनी स्वतंत्रता की 100वां साल मनाएगा। मैं 2047 में भारत के लिए अपना दृष्टिकोण साझा करने जा रहा हूँ। विकासशील से एक ही विकसित देश होना, यही एक राष्ट्र की यात्रा है। वर्तमान में भारत अपनी आज़ादी के 75वां वर्ष मना रहा है। देश को बड़ा और लोकतांत्रिक रूप से सफल बनाने का सपना हर किसी का होता है। एक ऐसा देश जहां सभी क्षेत्रों में समानता है और सभी लोगों के लिए यह प्रगति का गवाह है। अन्य लोगों की तरफ मेरा भी भारत के एक सपना है। 2047 में हमारा देश वही होगा जो हम आज से बनाएंगे। वर्ष 2047 में विकास, लिंग समानता, रोजगार और अन्य कारकों के चश्मे से भारत को देखने के लिए ऐतिहासिक वर्ष होगा। हम जैसा कुछ करने की सपना देखते हैं, ठीक वैसा ही बनते जाते हैं। इसी तरह हम 2047 के भारत की कल्पना कैसे करते हैं, यह तय करेंगे कि हम 25 वर्षों में कैसे क्रांतियों को अपनाएंगे। हम भारत को गरीबी, बेरोजगार, कुपोषण, भ्रष्टाचार और अन्य सामाजिक बुराइयों से मुक्त देखना चाहते हैं। अगले 25 वर्षों में भारत को आंतरिक और बाहर दोनों रूप से एक शक्तिशाली राष्ट्र के रूप में बदलना चाहिए। एक विकासशील राष्ट्र के रूप में हमारा सबसे महत्वपूर्ण लक्ष्य आर्थिक मोर्चा पर काम करना और कुछ प्रमुख सुधारों को लाकर अपनी अर्थव्यवस्था को मजबूत बनाना चाहिए। आर्थिक क्षेत्र के अलावा लैंगिक समानता की दिशा में काम करने और सभी को समान अवसर प्रदान करने की आवश्यकता है। अगले 25 वर्ष न केवल हमारे देश के लिए बल्कि भारत के नागरिकों के रूप में हमारे लिए भी अत्यंत महत्वपूर्ण होंगे। 2047 में भारत के लिए मेरा दृष्टिकोण महिलाओं को आर्थिक शक्तिशाली और आत्मनिर्भर बनाने का है। हमें समाज की सोच को बदलने के लिए कड़ी मेहनत करनी होगी। मेरी दृष्टिकोण है कि भारत एक ऐसा देश है जो महिलाओं को अपनी संपत्ति के रूप में देखता हो। साथ ही मैं महिलाओं को पुरुषों के समान स्तर पर रखना चाहता हूँ। शिक्षा को बढ़ावा देने के लिए सरकार का काम है, लेकिन बहुत से लोग ऐसे भी हैं जो इसके वास्तविक महत्व को नहीं समझते हैं। 2047 में मेरे विजन का भारत एक ऐसा स्थान होगा जहां सभी के लिए शिक्षा अनिवार्य होगा। 1947 में भारत को आज़ादी मिली है। 2047 में मेरे विजन का भारत एक आदर्श देश होगा जहां हर नागरिक समान होंगे। थैंक यू।
Good morning, everyone. I would like to speak a little bit about the topic of India's foreign policy. On the basis of India's foreign policy practice for last 65 years, the following achievements must be noted. Under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, India was the founder member of the NAM. It played an active role in strengthening the movement and representing the collective aspirations and interests of developing countries on vital issues such as development, peace, and stability. India has also been at the forefront of the world community against colonialism. Indian independence itself played the role of a catalyst in removing the traces of colonialism in other parts of the developing world, particularly in Africa. India was also the first country to raise the question for racial discrimination in South Africa at the UN in 1946. Another notable feature of Indian foreign policy has been its strong advocacy of general and complete disarmament, including nuclear disarmament. But even though India has and will remain committed to nuclear disarmament, it has consistently opposed discriminatory treaties such as the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. As a founder member of the UN, India has been firmly committed to the purposes and principles of the UN and has made significant contributions to its various activities, including peacekeeping operations. India, due to her population, economic growth, leading role in world affairs, and the contribution to UN, has advanced her claim for the permanent membership of the Security Council, which all permanent members except China have openly supported. India has succeeded in establishing a network of mutually beneficial relations with all countries of the world. Except for Pakistan, India's relations with her neighbors are improving gradually. India launched a neighborhood first policy in 2005, which laid emphasis on developing connectivity and people-to-people contact within these countries. Before that, the Gujarat Doctrine in 1988 postulated that India should not insist on reciprocity in developing relations with neighboring countries. One of the significant aspects of success of India's policy in post-1990 period has been the development of strategic relations with the US. The Peaceful Nuclear Cooperation Agreement signed in 2008 between the two countries is landmark in bilateral relations. It ended India's 34 years nuclear isolation in the world and recognized indirectly India as a nuclear power. Nowadays, India is a significant player at global level. Indian foreign policy is proactive and flexible enough to make suitable adjustments as per changing global scenarios while adhering to basic principles of its own foreign policy. It should continue to leverage its increasingly pivotal role in the path of evolving as a global superpower. Thank you.
Good morning, one and all present here. My name is Ritik Shahi, and as one of our fellow friends or classmates said that India is a grain surplus nation, and India have been agriculture dominating nation and has a grain productivity of 200 metric ton or million ton. That wasn't the case before independence. In 1943, it was a dark era for India because 40 million people died because of starvation in Bengal. and it is a very unfortunate thing for a nation in which 75% of the population is directly dependent on agriculture. I'm talking about the Great Bengal Famine that occurred in 1943, in which 40 million people, including children and women, were died because of starvation. Then the things improved after Green Revolution. The father of Green Revolution, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, Indian Green Revolution, he played a very important role in Green Revolution. First of all, the three aspects of Green Revolution were introduction of high yielding varieties, secondly, improving the infrastructure of the agriculture, and thirdly, to connect the agriculture with industries as to increase the employment in the industries and in the farmland. Secondly, the high yielding varieties needed more fertilizer, more machinery, and which needed more labor force, and which created more employment. Secondly, our grain deficit nation became grain surplus nation. And in today's time of era, India is one of the leading producer of many crops, cereal, pulses, and as you said, cotton. India is one of the largest exporter of cotton. And in 2022 and 2023, India's grain production was 3,300 lakh ton. It is a very remarkable figure, right? So this was the story of Green Revolution, in which the three aspects were introduction of high yielding varieties, secondly, connecting the agriculture to the industries, and third, which ultimately resulted in the increased jobs and employment. But there were, things don't work like this. If there are pros, there are cons also. The major con was we all focused on quantity. We did not focus on quality. That led to many diseases like cancer because of large use of urea, DAP, and the chemical fertilizer and pesticides which were used for increasing the production and productivity of the crops. And that lead to one severe disease called blue baby fever, which is caused because of high use of urea present in water. So now from my personal point of view, we need a second green revolution, in which we do not have to focus on quantity, but we have to focus on quality. Thank you.